Welcome to Third Thursday. Hello, I'm Donna Owens, Program Director for the OCALI Family Center. Each month, the OCALI Family Center posts a webcast that focuses on a topic of interest to parents and family members of individuals with developmental disabilities, including autism spectrum disorder. We've covered a number of topics, including puberty and sexuality, use of assistive technology, standards-based education for students with severe cognitive disabilities. You can check these out anytime on our Family Center webpage. Go to ocali.org/Family Center and click on the Third Thursday icon. All our webcasts are archived there, and you can see any topic that we've done. So, today, we're going to talk about the role that grandparents can play in supporting a family of a child with a disability. The role that grandparents can play in supporting their grandchildren with disabilities is enormous. Often, grandparents may have concerns about their grandchild's development before parents do. How can they bring that up without being divisive? It's a touchy situation. How can they support the son or daughter who finds themselves living with the challenge of autism, and how can grandparents help? Today, I'm going to be talking with Jennifer Crumans, an author of the book Autism and the Grandparent Connection. She will be giving us some ideas from her book about the important role that grandparents can play in supporting the entire family when a child with ASD is born. Welcome, Jennifer, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
We're excited. So, one of the things that I mentioned in the introduction is that grandparents sometimes will notice some delays in their grandchild's development before the parents do, and that can be a difficult situation. From your kind of research and studying about that, how can grandparents approach that?
Thank you. That's a good question, and I wish I had a standard answer, but I certainly can't answer because I think it's very much about each individual family and the relationship in that family. In our own situation, I definitely, looking back, our son is 21, and looking back, I know my mom certainly knew something was on her radar. I do believe that I knew, but I wasn't there yet. I wasn't ready to really acknowledge that it could be autism. Mm-hmm. So my relationship with my mother is strong, and she's an educator, and she would kind of nudge me towards it. And I do remember explicitly the day she put her hand on my hand and she said, "I think you need to ask him about autism." And my reaction was, no, he doesn't have autism. But I think somewhere in my heart, I kind of knew that he did. Other families, the relationship isn't as strong, so the answer is not as clear cut. Certainly, I think the one answer I would give is that you don't not say it. I'm not sure if that's correct, but to avoid it is also not correct to do. I think we have a responsibility to say, look, this is what I'm noticing. I would say that if it comes from a place of genuine, authentic love and concern, then I think it's more palpable to take that information, that news.
That it can
and it
be
might
heard
take time.
that way.
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right.
Right. And then the other point you make there is that it might take time.
Yes.
There can be somebody can hear a message, but have to have some time to process to even assimilate.
Yes.
I think is what you're saying. So
it's very much.
Right. So it's not a matter of I'm going to say it to you and it's going to fix
right.
things.
I'm going to say, oh, great. Okay, I
Right.
think you're right. The other thing, too, I learned yesterday that I think we have to be, in our conversation yesterday, it really occurred to me that we have to be okay with being uncomfortable for a while.
Yes.
Because it's not a comfortable situation, and nothing about it is easy. Mm-hmm. But it's a conversation that needs to be had.
Right. And the other thing I pick up from your answer, too, is that some of the information that you give, that your foundation is observational. This is what I see, and that concerns me.
Absolutely.
And I want to share that with you.
That's a very good point, because it's not, in no way would I have wanted my mom to say, whip out a diagnostic assessment and say,
Right.
This is what I'm seeing. And the same as an educator, I wouldn't do that
Right.
to a parent in my classroom. I think you look at it from an observation point of view and say, I think you should take those observations to someone who knows what they're doing.
Right, right. Very good. I think that one of the most tender times for families is when they first get the diagnosis. There's the kind of haunting feeling, but once it's confirmed by the experts, and this is a really critical time for families. What can grandparents do to be supportive at that time?
You know, I honestly think that that being supportive is real, and understanding that it is it's a blow, and we talked about it being grief. It's grief. It the ideas and the conceptions you had about the grandchild or the child you were going to have, even if you consciously didn't have those, you know, you have these ideas of what your child is going to be or not be in this world, and suddenly all of that is unclear.
Yes.
And in some people's minds, it's over. You know, it's like a death knell.
Yes.
So it is grief, and I do think that grandparents at that point need to be a soft spot to land. They need to be. Although now saying that though, they have to grieve too, because they are also going through this loss, we'll call it. And I think maybe the same way we deal with any loss in our lives, we have to be just compassionate and forgiving.
Yes.
For maybe the stupid things somebody might say, or the way we handle things humanly, that we're just humans.
Right. Are there some things that grandparents should avoid at that time? Some reactions that they might want to keep to themselves? I mean, everybody's processing this in their own way. And I mean, I'm a grandparent, and I know about the strength of that connection. But I also know about a sense of responsibility that I have to let my son and my daughter-in-law deal with their issues without my...
Wow, I love that. That's exactly it. I think an easy one, when I was doing the research for my book, I interviewed many people, and many families, grandparents, adult children, and it was resoundingly clear that the things that hurt the most are blame. And even if you don't think you're blaming, it can come out in your words. It can come out, if it's in your heart, sometimes it comes out without you even realizing.
Of course it does.
Right? Blame, criticism, judgment, and it can be really masked as concern.
Yes.
But people, they feel that hurt. And you know something, I think that even adult children, we just need that affirmation that somehow we're enough.
Yes.
That we're going to be okay, and that somehow we're going to get through this. And I think that grandparents offer that place of comfort. It's like I needed my mommy.
Right.
I was, you know.
Yeah. Someone to tell me it's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay. I needed that. And I needed her not to question the diagnosis.
Yes.
That we had many family members that did that, question it, and want me to get second opinions. Well, we had already had many opinions, many medical opinions, so we didn't need more. You know, so the questioning, the blaming, the judging, the criticism, those I have heard from other people. They're so destructive on relationships, and that does nothing for the child whatsoever.
No.
Does not.
And
serve
nothing
the
for the
child.
family.
No.
And nothing to add to the support that this family is going to need on an ongoing basis, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It comes down to that relationship.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about grandparents' reactions? Because we're talking about grandparents, and you did allude to it. They're doing their own processing.
Yes. Oh, grandparents. As I get older, and actually we have he's not our biological grandchild, but he is my heart grandchild. As Stanley came into the world, I realize it more now. We have our own set of expectations of what being a grandparent is going to be, and it's kind of neat that I get to live it now, because I feel this I want to spoil him. I want to, and I don't mean like to be a brat, but I want to like bring him everything, and I want to play with him, and I want to do all the things that I didn't do with my own children.
Of course, yes.
And I know from my own parents, when our son was born, or when our son was diagnosed, the fact that they had to be a little bit tougher. They had to follow our rules of reinforcement. They needed to change the way some of their language was. Like my mother, you know, I used to say to her, don't ask him if he wants to take out the garbage, because I know the answer to that.
Yes, right.
And so they had to change their grandparenting role. And I do think that's a loss. There is a grief that comes with that, and I think grandparents need to honor that. And parents need to honor that in grandparents.
Sure, sure. In fact, and I talked to a family about their story, and one of the things that they said, the mom said, was, I realized that we needed to take the advice of the experts, and that we were going to do this, and we had a family meeting to say, you've got to be here with us. You've got to be here, or it's going to be a detriment to Isaac, and we can't have that. And it was kind of, we're moving this direction, and you need to be on the bus with us.
I loved that. I love that, because at that point you're assembling a team. In my mind, as a parent, I was assembling my team, my village, to raise the child. And the village was much bigger than I ever expected it to be, and grandparents were an integral part of that. But you're right, we did, and maybe not consciously, but people who were not supportive, or who were not going to be on that bus, I think we kind of left them. And I don't even know if I did it consciously, but I certainly did not have the energy, nor the time, nor the heart to put into convincing people. So it was either you were with us or you were not with us, but we are moving forward. And I do think, and now that my son is 21 and the hindsight's 2020, it was wonderful for him, because the people that were on that, we didn't always get along, don't get me wrong.
Oh, no,
it wasn't,
I understand that.
Roses, but we certainly worked together with him in the center and him as the focus. And that made all the difference.
Right, right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And there is a role that grandparents have. That can be hard when you want to be very directive and controlling and that kind of thing.
Yes.
But there is also a place that you realize that this is for your children to navigate and for you to support them in doing so. And I think that's kind of a frame.
It is a frame, and it's critically important, because, to be fair, it sounds kind of cruel, but we had our turn as parents.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
and now it's their turn, and they are going to do things that that we're going to think, oh, I could save you a lot of pain if you don't go down that path.
Right.
But it's their path. And that's that they need to be able to do that.
Right.
And it's hard. I might be a little bit controlling too. And I might have a few opinions I want to share.
Yes, I certainly recognize it in myself. Yes.
I do too.
Yeah. So when a loved one does get that diagnosis of autism, what positive things can grandparents do then to support the entire family, the child and their son or daughter and that in-law, you know, that person outside the family that you're including
That's
in the unit?
That's a really good question. I think that I know in my book I spoke about, there's two ways, there's being and doing. And being, to me, is the attitude you bring to the relationship, and you bring to whatever you do, and the doing is maybe the more practical, action oriented. But something important is that if you're doing but you don't have the right attitude, or I don't say the right attitude, but you don't come from a place of compassion and love and authenticity, I think that is, my mother or my parents could make mistakes or could say the wrong thing, but if I know that their intentions are good and they're truly trying, then, so I think really important is that grandparents I've thought a lot about this with the people that have reached out to me. They've told me that they needed somebody to help with, at first, just the physical onslaught of now we're dealing with appointments and we're, you know,
Right.
and with the, if there's siblings, then there's other things going on in the home. So dealing with the day-to-dayness, so it might be doing laundry, it might be making a meal. It's almost something like similar to if you're helping a grieving family.
Right.
Over a death, because they just need support to get through the daily stuff at the beginning.
Right, and this is taking care of the nuts and bolts
That's
you're
the
talking
nuts and bolts.
about.
Life has to go on.
Yeah,
Bills have
right,
to be paid,
right.
and meals have to be made. Laundry has to be laundered. So that sort of thing I think is really important. And then, but again, if you're doing those things, but you've got that blaming sense, and it's sad, there are people out there who blame their child for maybe they didn't eat enough something when they were pregnant, or parents have the wrong, grandparents have the wrong idea of what autism is. I think too, one of the things that happened in my own experience, and is that whole it's almost like a conflict over the way you're raising them.
Yes,
That child,
yes.
if you just had more discipline, then that child would not be. And those
Right.
experts are just, they're calling it autism, but really it's just poor behavior, and
And poor parenting, is the implication.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
That's exactly right. And that is absolutely destructive.
Yeah.
I cannot find any good thing that comes out of that. It doesn't help the marriage, it doesn't help the relationship with the grandchild, it doesn't help the adult relationship. I think if you can hold that back and be open to learning that these doctors do know something about what's going on with this child, and then again learn and take that and learn from books, do your own research, find out, ask questions.
Right. Well, at OCALI, we often field phone calls from grandparents.
Oh, wonderful.
We do. I mean, and their questions are, sometimes they're trying to take some of the load. I'm doing some research about what services might be available for my daughter and my son-in-law. We have an 8-year-old, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm doing the research.
Excellent.
Was one
That's
of
a
the things
great
that y'all-
idea.
Yeah. And other times, and I don't know about advice or input. I think it's careful when grandparents feel like they're not offering enough support. They're not, I don't think they're dealing with it. I don't think they're checking into the specialists or the experts that they might check into, and what can I do? And I'm very hesitant about giving them a go. Go on and do this. And I guess
over.
Yeah, and you were my expert, and so now I'd just like to hear you respond to that.
I agree 100%, because there is a fine line, and if I give a straightforward answer, then someone might say Jennifer Crewman said I should be making these phone calls and I should be arranging the appointments, and I think there are times when that certainly is in the best interest of the child, and there are times when it certainly is not in the best interest. I love the idea, though, that grandparents can pick up the phone and get an idea of community resources.
Yes.
Because that is just phone calls alone, when you've got a child with autism beside you.
It's time consuming.
It is very time. And do you know something? Telling the story over and over was it killed me. Because they ask the same questions, all the different litany of what signs and how old and all your family history. And those questions, it was like reliving the nightmare over and over again. So to have somebody be able to make those contacts to at least get some of that groundwork done would be a huge relief. But then what do they do with it? Then it's that giving over of the information. And I know I would have hard time saying, I would want to keep moving, but it's, I think, in the best interest of the family if you give it and then hold and wait and see what is done with it.
So you provide the information. I've done this info gathering. I
love
take
info
this
gathering.
Yes.
That's perfect. And that's all it is.
Yeah, that's
It's not I'm taking over, I'm going to drive the bus now.
Right, yeah, because you're not enough.
Yes.
Is the is the message underlying that. Yeah.
Precisely. I'm excited. That's exactly
it's about
what
that
it is.
support, right. Now, there are so many interventions and strategies and ways to approach kids with autism, and what can grandparents learn from that, and how can they kind of narrow it down to what might be best in terms of their interactions with their grandchildren, their grandchild on the spectrum?
I do know another good question. One of the traps that I heard in all my interviews that sometimes happened was that grandparents would find, maybe it's like parents, like grandparents and parents alike, when that panic button, to me it's a panic button when you get the diagnosis, you're now like, okay, now we know what we're working with, and now we've got to get moving because early intervention's everything, and we've got to get this bus, and we got to drive. But what happens there is, I think sometimes people want a quick answer, and they want a quick fix. There is no quick fix. Temple Grandin always says that this is nothing that you're going to just take a pill and it's going to be fine. And I'm not sure that that's what it's meant. There's a lot of growth that can happen. So slowing down. And I've already forgotten your question, but I didn't really forget your question.
Oh, about interventions and strategies and how grandparents can participate or I don't know, even choose the ones
Right.
to get. There's so much information.
Right.
That how do you narrow it down to something that's effective for you and how you relate to your grandchild and to your son and daughter or
Right. I think it's a lot, coming back again to there's this wide assortment.
Yes.
The grandparent might do information gathering, to use
Yes.
your word, and then where they might go over is saying, okay, there's the information and this is what I think you should do. I think that, this is the therapy, this is the magic bullet. There are no magic bullets.
Right.
So grandparents can fall into the trap of, if you don't do this therapy, then you're failing your my grandchild.
Yes, right.
And I don't think they would overtly say that, but it can come out in the way that they're saying it. So I think definitely there are a lot of interventions and a lot of there's oodles of information out there. Grandparents need to be aware that it's slow. It's time. We have to take our time and gather evidence. We need to have some evidence-based strategies in there. And that, again, we give the information to the parents, and then the parents need to sift through that themselves and find out what best matches the child and their resources and the family.
Right.
It's not just about the child with autism, it's about a whole family dynamic.
It is. Sure, it is about the whole family.
It is.
And I think maybe take a lead from the family in terms of what interventions are they committed to.
Oh yes, because really that is the key, is to commit to something.
Yes.
That you are going to decide to do, and then you're going to, all of you,
Yes.
especially particularly with autism, in that, because we have to be consistent, even just in the words we use sometimes.
Right.
These children need us to speak the same language and be on the same page as far as how we're going to intervene. It's critically important for our kids with autism.
Right.
That we speak the same and work with the same interventions.
Because that kind of consistency is going to have an effect on how they develop, how they grow and learn.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you know something that just came to my mind is that for us as a family, we chose, I think being an educator myself, we chose to look at it from a behavioral perspective. And so we certainly did different, I can't even think of the word,
enterologists
yes,
or whatever
we
they
did a whole person approach, right? So we looked at the social, we looked at his gut, we looked at the behaviors and the learning that had to happen. And then what was neat was my parents said to us, okay, how can we use your principles of applied behavioral analysis, and how can we use all the different techniques that you guys are using, and how can we make those part of our grandparenting style?
Yes.
You know, and teaching my mom not to ask open questions
or
yes or no questions. So that was a biggie. You know, don't ask him if he wants to eat his broccoli. You know, this is the broccoli. This is what we're having.
This is
Do you
dinner.
want broccoli? Or this is dinner. Yeah. So teaching that, and they were really open to learning how to become a grandparent within that intervention frame.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into my next question about kids on the spectrum. Can grandparents if they've had grandchildren before, or they watched, they have friends who have have grandchildren, and you know how they all interact, and it can be difficult sometimes to interact with a grandchild with autism.
Yes.
And you want to do those same things. You want to hug them, and you want to just smother them with kisses, and this is just not a
not a good idea.
no, not a good idea.
It's like hugging a cat sometimes.
Yes, that's right. So how can grandparents relate to their grandchild when there can be some of those challenges and obstacles?
I love that, because I think it's slow and steady, and it's, to me, that's what I find really neat about individuals with autism, is they're so authentic. We have to take time to get to know them. We don't just jump in and rush, and it has to be on their terms, because it's only fair. We can't assault them with our hugs.
Right.
You bring back a flood of memories there. Wow. I think that taking the time to get to know your grandchild. So it might be back to observation, watching what do they play with. Wow. I'm processing slowly here. I can remember, I actually have a memory of my father sitting on the carpet watching my son play. Of course, my son was quite oblivious to my father being there, but he watched him play. And I always loved how he didn't just jump in and make the train make a sound. He waited to see. It was almost instinctive. He didn't know really much about autism. He just knew that this boy was sitting there and he loved him to death. And he was dying to jump in, but he's had this sense of, I need to wait him out and see if I'm welcome into his world. And over time, just by not being intrusive, he didn't become aversive, and he stayed a very positive feature in my son's life. And to this day, my son's 21 and my father's 85, and they're very close. There's that deep mutual respect, because
it was important for him to establish a relationship with his grandson, and he knew enough to follow his grandson's lead. I want to see what's important to you.
Right, it wasn't about, I'm a grandfather, I get to play Fisher-Price with you.
It's and all boys do this.
Right. Yes, it was what, I remember Kieran playing with a fishing lure, and someone might look at that and say, well, that's a ridiculous toy for a child to be playing with, or why didn't they play with that nice red car I bought them for Christmas? You can't get your nose out of joint because the child chooses what they choose, and that's a hard thing, especially if it hurts it hurts. We're humans too.
Oh, sure we are. I thought you would love this fire engine.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yes. And then when they don't love the fire engine, it can be really disheartening. But it's to stop to just recognize, okay, that's about me. I need my grandchild. I want to love him where he's at, and affirm where he's at and who he is or she is. Right. And give them the space to be themselves. Does that make sense?
It does. It does make sense. The other grandparents that I think about often are grandparents who are distant grandparents. They live 2 states away or 1 state away, and they don't have the benefit of even like a weekly face-to-face connection. And you learn things over time, as time culminates and stuff. But as a grandparent that is not a part of a child's life very often. Did you talk to any of the grandparents that you talked to? Did they speak about that, talk about that?
Yes, and it broke my heart every time, because I do know that my parents played a huge role in my children's lives. But at the same time, I do have advice, because I've heard great stories of people. And one of the things that I saw that worked was grandparents who, I'll start with what didn't work, actually. What didn't work is when grandparents would say to me, my grandchild's really into this digital world, and I'm not. I refuse to be part of the digital world. I believe we have to meet the kids where they are. And our kids in this day and age are on Facebook. They're on, I don't even know half of what they're on anymore. But so the grandparents that have made it work have used technology to build the relationship. FaceTime. wonderful stories about grandparents using FaceTime. No, you can't touch your grandchild, which might just
Right.
kill you more. Again, it might kill you more. And I think that the bottom line is that the kids are living in a digital world. Whether they have autism or not, they are living online. Their world is in a phone or on a computer or on an iPad. So they need, I think grandparents, if we want to build a relationship, we need to go where the kids are.
Right.
And so I've heard wonderful stories about grandparents who would read stories on FaceTime.
Oh.
Yes, every Monday night or something that the grandma would read a story on FaceTime. I've had other grandparents who, one woman actually reported back to me, I had suggested maybe she record her voice, and she took the child's favorite stories and read them into some sort of device, and then that parent had the child listen to the story read by grandma over and over, and when at bedtime or whatever,
Sure.
and then when FaceTime was more meaningful, because suddenly the voice, I know that voice. I've heard
I
that
see,
voice,
yes.
right? The
Yes,
child makes the
acclimating to
connection.
it,
That's
yes.
exactly right.
Yes.
I think that you can't touch them, but you can certainly we need to use, I think it's great to use technology.
Yes.
Skype was another one that people have used. I think it's trickier when the child won't necessarily attend for a while, so that's where we might have to build up that sort of familiarity. Who is this person? But we can go old style and use photo albums of the people. But again, we've got voice recordings. We've got so many ways we could do video, so many ways to make that person real to the child.
Right, right.
So that we build up to it.
And connecting on, like you said, a favorite story. Favorite things that you
Absolutely.
connect around, those things that are already known to be a favorite of this child.
Absolutely. A song that
Yes.
the child loves, or somebody talking about an episode of something that the child likes. We may have to, we were all inundated. I was at the Barney age, so I had to know everything about Barney. And grandparents today would know things about Paw Pals and all different and Legos. And so, but becoming well versed in that child's world, I think builds the bridge that is
Right.
necessary. It takes work,
Yeah.
but I think it's a really doable way to build that relationship,
Right.
but on the child's interests, not based on what
Grandparents think
Right.
children should be
Right.
interested in. Yeah.
Right.
Well, let's talk about one of the biggest headaches that families of kids on the spectrum often have, and that's around holidays. And so you get 20 to 25 relatives, and in this kind of enclosed space, and you have a child with autism. And do you have any direction to grandparents about how to deal with those kind of very stressful situations?
Yes, because they are. I can remember dreading Christmas
Yes.
coming up. We talked about the fire truck.
Yes.
That's one biggie is it hurts when you give a child a gift and they don't look like they appreciate it.
Yeah.
It hurts when the gift is not even looked at. I can remember one Christmas when it literally took us all day I say us because we had to sit around, but he wouldn't unwrap. Each gift was so novel that it threw him right out. Santa Claus may have delivered too many gifts that year, and Santa Claus may have learned that year. But it took us all day to get through the novelty of all of them, and then at the end of the day, it was really more the paper or the boxes.
Right.
It really wasn't about the gifts. So allowing your feelings to not get too hurt, but our children desperately need somebody not to come up and attack them or assault them with
Right.
hugs. They desperately need a place, an escape plan.
An escape place.
But to be fair, I need an escape plan. at
Yeah,
Christmas.
often in
Yes.
these kind of situations, we all often
need
do,
a little
but
quiet
this is
time.
critical.
It is critical, and they cannot. A lot of times, our kids with ASD can't cope with the noises and the smells and the busyness, and we're out of routine at Christmas.
Right.
Everyone's off. I know I'm not as patient and loving as I
Yes.
should be, and so our family relationships are busier and running. And I think that so they need to be given, there has to be an allowance there. There has to be, wow, this child's really living with a lot right now. And then a physical escape, I think a place where is their quiet
But you would
spot.
plan for that.
That's
then.
right. You plan for it ahead, and you don't think it's rude when the child uses that spot.
Yeah.
Because the child, I think I give kudos to parents who recognize that where is my child going to overwhelm? What am I going to provide so that my child
Yes.
can cope with the holidays or with whatever is going on? The other thing that I have found really useful for social or family gatherings is depending, of course, on your child's functioning, but prepping the child, priming them for what is coming up.
I think you are just, we could talk for forever.
Oh, we
You are
could.
full of great information here. And I know that in your book you list 10 things for grandparents to know about how to support their grandchildren and family of a child with autism. And we will have that as a PDF as one of the resources
Excellent.
that's attached to this video. We will also have your book, The Grandparent Connection, as one of the resources that we list. And the other thing I want to go back to that I don't want to be lost in this conversation is one of the important things that grandparents can be to their son or daughter, to that family at first, is maybe a reminder that this is a process.
Perfect.
It's not going. We're not going to have all the answers right away. We don't need to worry excessively. We'll take it a day at a time. And I think you said it's the soft place to land. The thing.
100%.
Yes. The person to kind of be the adult in the room when feelings are taking over, in a sense, is what I heard you say.
Absolutely. This is
about that
it sounds
grandparent
cruel, but it's
connection.
not about you.
No, right.
It's
I
really,
think that's it.
and I think even, I agree that we need, when a child is diagnosed with a disability, it feels as if somehow, I don't know if this is because I'm the mother, but it feels as if somehow we've done something wrong.
Right.
And I
Yes.
don't, that's how I
That's
felt.
the first point. Every parent I've talked to says the first thing I had were doubts about what did I do?
Yes.
What did I do?
I
Did
even
I
remember
cause
going
this?
over my diet when I was pregnant,
Yes.
thinking, did I eat something? Like, it's
Yes.
kind of crazy. But we've been conditioned to over time. And I just think I needed my mom and my dad to say, we're going to get through this. We don't have all the answers.
Right.
We don't even really have any answers at this point. And I think you mentioned something really important there. It's we're not sprinting to a finish line.
Right.
We are on a process of growing and learning. And my mother said something, this just came back to me, that she said to me, as we went through the process of course, you have to advocate and you have to learn new skills as a parent. And my mother one day, the highest compliment she ever gave me, which was, maybe not ever gave me, but it was neat, is she said to me, now I know why you had the personality you had growing up. She said, you were always pushing the bar a little bit. She said, you were chatty Cathy, always talking, and she said, you just had this drive in you that you were going to not get what you want, because she said, I wasn't spoiled, but I was like, I was going to move.
Right.
If a mountain had to be moved, we were going to find a way to move it. And she said, that has been your greatest gift. I think helping your child or your adult child to know you are gifted, you have gifts, you can handle this. It's not just a pat on the shoulder and saying you're going to be fine.
Right.
These are the skills I see you having. These are the gifts. I'll help fill in the holes. And let's do this together.
Yes, right. So and so you're showing them their confidence, your
Yes.
confidence in them.
And their competence.
And their competence. Very good.
Hold them
Yes.
capable of handling this with your support.
Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I loved it. Thank you.
I
It's
enjoyed
great
it.
to
Thank
support
you.
parents and
And
grandparents.
check out the resources just below the Third Thursday icon for our grandparent session.
Thank
Thank you.